Hello everyone, my name is Luis Hernandez. Today we're going to talk a little bit about building castles in the sky, how to create your very own network in the Amazon Web Services cloud. This is going to be a hands-on tutorial, so we will be jumping right onto the AWS console very shortly here. However, before that, I wanted to make a very quick mention about myself and who I am. Again, my name is Luis Hernandez, and I'm an AWS Certified Solutions Architect at the associate level. I have over 15 years of experience in the information technology industry, and I've served at roles such as Unix Systems Administrator, Linux Systems Administrator, Systems Engineer, etc. at companies small and large such as IBM, Hewlett-Packard, and many others. Anyway, that is enough about me. Let's discuss what we will be learning today. At a high level, what we'll do today is we're going to create a VPC, and that stands for Virtual Private Cloud. And what that is essentially a small private network inside of the AWS cloud. So we're going to create a VPC, then we're going to build a public subnet inside of that VPC. Once that's completed, we're going to launch an EC2 instance inside of our new subnet, and along the way, we're going to build a new security group. At that point, I want to take a small amount of time to discuss the difference between network access control lists and security groups. Now we'll wrap up the tutorial once our EC2 instance is up and running on our public subnet and we're able to talk to it and reach it via SSH, as well as we're able to see a web page being served out of it. So let's go ahead and get started right away. All right, so we're coming over to our AWS console, and in order to get started, the first thing I want to do is go to Services, under Networking and Content Delivery, and I'm going to click on VPC. Now here, you'll notice that you can start VPC Wizard, but we're not going to do that, although I do want you to know that it's there and it's available to you and it could be useful. However, for the purposes of a tutorial, that would kind of defeat the purpose. So we're going to do it manually. We're going to go to Your VPCs link on the left here, and you'll notice your default VPC is there. We're going to leave that alone and create a new VPC by hitting the Create VPC button up here. So I'm going to create a new VPC, and that's basically what I'll call it. Now down here you'll notice it's asking for a CIDR block. Conveniently enough, there's one right here, which is in fact valid, and is also representative of the largest network that AWS will allow you to create inside your VPC, which is a /16. The last option here is tenancy. I'm going to leave that as default. The other option is dedicated, and if you select that, it is very expensive. Essentially, that refers to dedicated hardware, and very expensive. So you would only do this if you have a very good reason to do it this way. Otherwise, go with default. That's what I'm selecting here. And once I'm done with that, I will hit Yes, Create. And essentially, this is creating our VPC. Our castle walls are now built. This is the outer walls of the castle. The VPC, essentially the Virtual Private Cloud, has been given a name and it is now created, but it's pretty empty. There's not much we can do with it, so we have to build the stuff that's in it. So the next thing I want to do is build a subnet. I'm going to come over here to subnets. You'll notice there's a couple already there. These belong to the default VPC, so we're going to leave those alone and come over here to the blue button where it says Create Subnet, and we're going to create a new subnet. We are going to call this a public subnet. Okay, so okay, fair enough, public subnet, and it's asking us to select Okay, so now that we've named our public subnet, we select our VPC that we created. The availability zone, you can leave that as is with no preference, or you can select one. If you leave it no preference, it's just going to select one for you. And finally, it's also asking for a CIDR block here. Again, conveniently, one is presented up top. I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this and make a small change to it. It is a valid CIDR block, and it is within our VPC CIDR block range. So once everything looks good and I like the way things look, I will just go ahead and hit yes, create. And now what we've done here, if you were thinking about the VPC, the virtual private cloud, as your castle, then what we have just done here is create a chamber within the castle. This is a subnet within our VPC. Now the name of it is public subnet, but it's not really public yet because we haven't done the work necessary to make it public. And what that consists of is basically creating a internet gateway, attaching that internet gateway to our VPC, and then creating a route that leads from our subnet to that gateway. So let's do that right now. We have our subnet here created. Let's go ahead and jump over to Internet Gateways, and we'll click on Create Internet Gateway. So here's my new Internet Gateway. I'll just create. Now, once that comes into being, it is not attached or associated with anything. So while it's selected, we have to attach it to our VPC. We'll notice that the VPC selection is already made for us. It's the only one there. So we'll go ahead and select that and say yes, attach. Okay, great. So now you see that the Internet Gateway has been attached to our VPC, or virtual private cloud. So the next thing that we need to do here is create a route that leads from our subnet to that gateway. Let's go ahead and do that here. I clicked on Create Route Table. I'm going to name I'm just going to name it Public Route, and it wants to know what VPC to associate it with. I'll put it in our new VPC that we've created. We'll say yes, create. Perfect. So this route is there, but we actually have to build the inner workings of that route. So the way that we do that is, while our route is selected, we come down here to this area and select the Route tab, and this is essentially going to tie one end of this route to the Internet Gateway, and then we're going to tie the other end of the route to the subnet in the next step. But first we need to tie this end. So the way that we do that is by clicking on the Edit button and coming down here to click on Add Another Route. And here we want all traffic to be able to find its way to that Internet Gateway. The way we do that is by using the 0.0.0.0/0 address, and that represents all traffic. And if you click on Target here, you'll notice that our new gateway is automatically populated, so we can just select that and hit Save. Okay, at this point, the one end of our route has now been associated with our Internet Gateway. Let's come over to Subnet Associations, and we'll tie the other end of our route to our subnet. And we do that, we can see that subnet is here, but it's not associated with anything. So we'll edit, we'll select that, our subnet. Conveniently enough, it's called public subnet, so you know that that's the public subnet if you had other options here. Select it, click Save, and at this point you now have your subnet is now finally public, right? Because now you have a route that is actually associated with your public subnet and also associated with the Internet Gateway. So At this point, we should be able to go to and launch some EC2 instances. But before we do that, I want to do one last thing with my subnet. If you'll notice over here, on my public subnet, under auto-assign public IP, it says no. So what we want to do is I want to fix that so that it says yes. And what that'll do is that will automatically assign an IP address, a public IP address, to any instances that are launched inside of the subnet. So the way that we do that is select the subnet and go over to Subnet Actions, modify auto assign settings, click on this, and by doing this I am now enabling the auto assignment of version 4 IP addresses in that subnet. I'll hit save, close, and you will notice that now that setting has changed to yes. Okay, great. At this point we have built our VPC. We have built a subnet inside of our VPC and performed the work necessary to make it into a public subnet. Now we should be able to go to EC2 and launch some instances. So let's go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to go ahead and launch an instance, and I'm going to select the default Amazon AMI, Linux AMI here, top one. I'm going to launch that AMI into a T2 micro to remain within the free tier. And here we have some options. Let's talk about this. Number of instances. Obviously, I just want to launch one instance, so I'm going to leave that as is. Purchasing option, request bought instances. I don't want to select this because I want on-demand instances. And the reason why I want that is because I want to use them right now. I don't want to wait till the price reaches some lower price, which is what that is. Okay, so the network here, I'm going to select my new VPC, obviously, and you'll see that my public subnet is automatically presented there. If I built more subnets inside this prior to this step, they would show up here and you would have to select, but since I've only built one, that is the only option, so it is automatically selected. Auto assign IP. If I had forgotten to change the subnet setting to assign public IPs, I could fix it here. But since I did that, we don't have to worry about that. We'll just leave that as is. Here's where you can assign a role to your EC2 instance. I have an S3 access role. However, for the purposes of this tutorial, it is not necessary. So I will not assign a role at this time. Everything else will remain the same, although one exception. I am going to go ahead and create a small shell script here. And this is going to run when this instance comes up. So what I'm going to do is just very quick, This is just a very quick shell script. What I want to do is, we want to install Apache. So yum install httpd -y to force the install. Great. Then we want to run a yum update, obviously. So yum update -y. Excellent. Then let's see. Of course, I want to bring up Apache, so and if for any reason that should happen to go down, I want it to be brought back up. The way that we do that is with the check config command that I'm writing right here. Okay, great. Okay, and now that's pretty much all I'm doing. I just basically installing Apache, running a yum update so that I can patch up the operating system. Then I am turning on Apache and I am running the check config httpd on command so that in the event that the http daemon should go down, this will bring it back up. Okay, great. That's all I want to do for the time being. Let's move forward to the next area. Storage, I'm going to leave that as it is, as default. Here we get an opportunity to name the system. So this is going to be web system system. Okay, web server 001 will be the name. Next, we're going to configure security groups. Okay. So here is asking us if we want to create a new security group or if we want to use the default security group. What we want to do here is I'm going to create a new security group, and let's call this EMC security group, and that should do just fine for the description as well. So copy and paste. And here we notice that we have a rule. We have an SSH rule allowing SSH traffic to come in and out of the security group. And keyword here, or key phrase, is in and out. Security groups are stateful. Well, that means that if you have a rule allowing traffic in on a particular port, that automatically also allows traffic to go out through that same port. Okay, so SSH can come in and out with this one rule. That is called stateful. That is what they mean when they say stateful. That is in contrast with the access control list with the network ACLs, which are stateless. And what that means essentially is that if you write a rule for traffic to be allowed in one direction, it doesn't automatically allow that traffic to go in the opposite direction. Okay, that's what stateless mean, and that applies to network access control lists. Security groups are stateful, so I don't have to write two rules for SSH. One rule allows it to travel both ways. And in order for me to allow, for example, HTTP traffic, all I have to do is add a rule here, select HTTP, and that is opened up to basically port 80 to everyone in both directions. Okay, so at this point, my security group has two rules. One that allows traffic both ways for SSH, and one that allows traffic both ways for HTTP. I do want to point out that you can narrow the IP to a particular range, to a particular block, or even a particular IP right here. But we're going to leave that for this purposes like it is right now. All right, so this looks good. Let's go ahead and preview our instance, and we're going to go ahead and launch our instance at this time. Acknowledge that I have my access keys. I do. Launch instance. Okay, so our instance is now launching. Let's go take a look at it. You can see our instance is coming up here. We do have a prior test instance that I was working on that has been terminated. Pay no attention to that. Let's focus on our web server here. And if we did everything properly, pretty soon we will show a public IP here. Now, once that is available, we can then go ahead and essentially, I'm running on Windows, so I need to use PuTTY in order to connect to my EC2 instance. Okay, and we see that a public IP has been assigned and is presented. I'll go ahead and copy that. Go back to my PuTTY robot here, and EC2 user at IP address, and we are connected on port 22. We are using SSH, and I do have a key that I want to use, so I'll browse to my key, select it, going back to the session, take a quick last look, everything, make sure everything looks good, and I will hit open. Okay, at this time you see I'm going to click yes here, and excellent. We are now connected to this instance right here on this SSH terminal. So the first thing I'm going to do here is elevate my privileges, and now I am the root user. Okay, So where am I? I am, of course, in the home directory of the EC2 user where I first logged in. So I want to change my directory and go to a place called var www html. Whoops. Learn how to spell better. HTML. Okay, and let me make sure that I am here. There's nothing here. And I am in fact here. So now what I want to do here is I want to VI, and I'm going to create a new file called index.html, and I'm going to put just like one line worth of HTML in there, and it'll create a quick little web page, and we'll be able to see if this all works. Okay, so VI index.html, insert, and basically here what I want to write is just HTML, and I want this to be visible, so I'm going to go with heading, and I don't know, how about excellent. Okay, that's about good. Let's go ahead and close our HTML and close our H1. Okay, let's go ahead and save this file. Make sure it's there. I have a tendency of liking to look in the file that I just created to make sure it looks the way I expect it to, and it does. Everything does look okay. Well, if that worked, then we should be able to come over here and essentially select our IP address and navigate to it. And we should see, hello everyone, if you can see this, it worked. Great. So at this time, we have connected to our EC2 instance using both HTTP as well as SSH through the rules and the security group that we created. And this is the conclusion of this tutorial. If you have any questions, if you think I missed anything, please feel free to leave a comment. Any comments, I'll try to keep up with them. Otherwise, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.